Good evening, everyone. Today I'll be speaking with Vrishali. She is an artist mentor here with us at Art1st. We're just waiting for our followers to pool in, waiting for Vrishali to join us, and we will begin. Until then, I was hoping that I could get maybe some feedback on the angle of the video, on the sound. If maybe you could send in your comments through the chat, that would be helpful. So nice to see so many of you joining us and on time. We're just waiting for Vrishali to get online. I should probably not mention this just yet, but Vrishali and I discussed this very exciting visual session. So I may have ruined the surprise, but I have also made myself quite excited for the session that we're about to have. Vrishali works specifically with the communities, and we had a conversation about changing the title of her post, of the name of this session as well. And she's here. I'll just add her. And she's joining. And hello.
I just got the request just now.
Oh, that's fine. Everyone. You look very nice. Hello everyone, this is Vrishali and I am Wynona, and we are both from Art1st, and today we are here to... Should we begin, Vrishali? Do you want to maybe put on a filter? Though you look quite nice now, I wouldn't recommend a filter at any moment. This is very nice lighting for you.
Okay, alright.
So I kind of introduced you already before you arrived because I wanted to fill in the silence. So I was thinking we could just get right into it and start with, the very basic question of just how old were you when you realized that you wanted to be an artist? Is there a story that you can tell us?
Oh yes. So of course this is in retrospect, but when I was 6 years old, I went to my cousin's display at MSU Baroda. She is also an artist, Shruti Fakre, and she sneaked us into the girls' hostel where we lived for 2 days, and just being there, it was I realized that everybody in that space had a different kind of intelligence, had a different kind of sensitive outlook towards everything they came across, and that stayed with me. And then, of course, growing up, I wanted to become a veterinarian. Then I visited a veterinary hospital in Bhopal, and I saw very gory scenes of injection being thrown at a buffalo. So I was like, this is not my thing. But yes, that is what stayed with me.
I like that it was that simple. I really like how you just said it was a sensitive outlook, and that can come from anyone, wherever they are. And then that kind of brings me to a question about your work, because I know that your work specifically is informed by a lot of current events, but it is deeply connected to the outdoors. And we can tell that, you already have a connection with nature, given your love and want to be a veterinarian. So that was really cool. But just getting back to the question, do you think you can comment on your relationship with creativity within the context of your work?
Yeah, so just responding to the first part, to be more specific, I feel my artistic concerns pertain to ecology and its impact on sociality. For me, the process of art making essentially is the process of producing knowledge. And yeah, I mean, it might sound very abstract, but maybe we can look at it through an example, where through visuals one produces knowledge, but within my practice, while working with people or say a community, that process of producing knowledge becomes way more dynamic. Um, so let's get to the example first of how the hell can a visual produce any kind of knowledge. And a very simplistic, very basic example. I'll give something that we use even in schools. So
All right.
do you see these two lines?
Yes, I can.
And which one do you think is heavier?
The first line I think is heavier.
First line you think is heavier. Okay. Now, can you tell us why you think is the first one heavier?
I think the first one is heavier because it would probably have been the action, the physical action of making such a thick line itself. So that's why I feel like it is heavier.
Okay. So but this one is thicker, isn't it?
This one's thicker, but it was probably made using the long side of the instrument of the medium that you used.
Yes, that's true. But out of these two, you're saying this one is heavier, right? The first
Yes.
one.
The first one is heavier, the second one is thicker.
And can you think of a visual reason as to why you think is this one lighter than this one?
So in my head, the second one is a thin sheet of paper that you
Mm-hmm.
can just tear very easily. And the first one is like a thick stick that I'll have to put some pressure in order to break it apart.
Right. Okay. So so just by looking at these two different kinds of lines, one is able to understand if it is heavier or is it denser or can it break easily or not. I'm just trying to make this vague claim a bit more concrete through the example. But now coming to the second part of your question, where you asked relationship of creativity within the context of my work, I feel just like right now we observed something, and based on that observation, then we started forming certain connections of this line with a real life object and its characteristics. I feel this process of uh, linking and within my practice more specifically, linking ecology with uh, forming a connection with ecology and the idea of social justice or sociality or whatever one may call it, um, is the process of creativity, both on the level of material and concept. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
It definitely gives me context and gives me a great kind of leaping off point into my next question, because I like how you described your creative process within your own understandings and your passion for ecology, as well as uniting both ecology and sociality. And just my immediate next question was going to be, how do you connect these learnings that you take in from your own practice into a classroom?
I feel that transition from whatever you say, public art or community based artistic practice, that transition from here to a classroom has been very seamless. And maybe I can give an example of Akshara High School, where I did the mentoring course uh, for teachers, art teachers. We basically integrated the art projects, along with the locality that the school was situated in. And it was very close to mangrove, so it has several access points to the mangrove. Um, Along with that, it had a lot of cooperative housing societies, very innovative spaces that have been converted into shops, and very innovatively done shops. uh, and even just very uh, simple but make do makeshift uh, uh, vendors. And so we went with the school children to do a lot of field visits in these spaces. uh, the children studied a variety of plants. um, it's a space for migratory birds. uh, it attracts a lot of migratory birds since it's a mangrove. And even just interacting with the shop vendors by way of making portraits, or by replicating in terms of pattern, and to understand pattern and rhythm, how they have arranged their shops, etc. So that was a very interesting exercise. But the whole year's work culminated in an exhibition that did not stay within the school campus. It
Mm-hmm.
was displayed in the lanes and bylanes of the locality, and that sort of generated a very interesting dialogue between the school and the people who were living there. For example, there is an activity called Colors in My Garden, where kids of second grade have done very interesting drawings of a variety of plants, and that was displayed in cooperative housing societies, right in front of their little windows, where there weren't really gardens. And so uh, it just generated a very different kind of dialogue. Also, people over there in front of whose houses we had displayed, it became they took on the responsibility of safeguarding the works of children. And so just it
I
was
like it. The community then got involved in both, their process as well as kind of like you said, they took it upon themselves to, in a way, make themselves part of the work that they were kind of uh, the work they were putting together. I think that's quite wonderful. And you mentioned students of grade two, but within a school. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a question, Vrishali. How relevant and critical is a field trip as part of teaching methodology for an art educator?
I think it's very important. It's extremely important because, like I discussed earlier, also how important observation is, and to be able to look around and make a connection, and not just stop at making a connection, but also then apply the concept that one has learned. And
Mm-hmm.
in the process of application of that concept, you're actually engaging with people, so you're forming a meaningful dialogue, mm,
Yeah.
which is what field work facilitates.
Absolutely. There is then no distance or no gap that needs to be bridged, because then it kind of becomes exactly part of how one, or how, like, student then begins to perceive a lot of the information that then they are expected to, at least within, a classroom.
Yeah,
Which then brings us to a question that I really like asking all of our mentors. You guys teach so many kids across so many classrooms in so many age groups. Um, have there been any creative or intriguing ways in which your students have managed to overcome challenges within a classroom?
oh yes, oh yes. Because I feel whenever a facilitator unfolds a concept, or gives the child an autonomy, uh, to or even a sense of ownership of their own class, of their work, um, children respond so beautifully. Like in one of my workshops that I take at Dharavi, um, the class was supposed to be capped at 30. It was a mixed age group, and I had this number in mind. And then slowly, the number of children increased to up to 75, and it was a mixed age group. So the oldest child was in 10th grade, and the youngest was barely like just learning to speak. So that's the range, and that's also the number. So 3, 4 classes consecutively, this kept happening, and I was going berserk, like what is happening. So then I asked children, please tell me how can we manage this, like distributing and collecting the material and collecting the drawings. So the older children said that, what we can do, we can group the class, and the older ones, one older child can look after a few younger ones. And so we grouped the class like that and worked beautifully. So yeah, I mean, there have been several such instances.
I think it's absolutely lovely how the solution came from the students. Usually, you have teachers talking about how students are the problem, but your students were actually the solution. And I think that's quite a lovely experience that you shared with us. Thank you, Vishali. We have two questions. One is related to what we just talked about. Vrishali, do you think mixed age groups in a class can facilitate learning? Since you've had first-hand experience, what are your thoughts?
The answer to that is slightly complicated. I feel it works, but it doesn't work all the time, because if the older children have to always take care of the younger ones, then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel their learning gets compromised. But of course, there are ways to handle that,
And
and
your
it must.
students might be able to help you with those answers.
Yeah.
They'll only tell you, no, I will learn better this way. So, Vrishali, about what you said, of your field work that you had with with your students, we have a question that asks, what is the difference then between a regular field trip and a pedagogical arts field trip, or just an
Okay.
art field trip?
All right. So I think for an arts field trip, what is essential is firstly to remember the learning objective. We're not going out for a picnic uh, just like that. So
Mm,
if there is a chapter, if there is a context in which one is uh, taking children for the field trip, let's say um, an activity like colors in my garden, and then based on that chapter, if you're taking a field trip, it will be very different from a field trip that I'm taking for studying uh, say gravity outside. I don't know, I mean, I'm just, so um, definitely there is a difference in terms of the way one observes, the way one is able to translate those observations. And the most important part is then to reflect on what one has drawn. like we just
absolutely.
did, like we did in the puzzle, where I asked you and then you said and then you justified it. And so there was a rationalizing of the whole experience.
Absolutely. It's almost as if there was a contextualization before we came to whatever conclusions we had to. Just, kind of getting all the points in place before we, I don't know, made whatever assertions. Like, I said that that's a paper and that's a stick in that same way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I have two last questions for you before I let you go, Vrishali. And this one, I know that the first time I asked you, also you got quite excited by it. But if you had all the resources in the world, what would your ideal art making space be like? I can see your face is glowing already.
uh, yeah, so I feel I'll just go mad if I have all the resources. But I think what I would really want to do is to make a forest instead of really a studio, because whatever we use, all the resources finally come from somewhere. And what is that somewhere? to me, that is forest.
That's lovely. And I feel like then I owe you a trick question. If the resources that you want to use are natural, Vrishali, my question to you is, if you had absolutely no resources in the world, what would you make your ideal art space?
Then I think it would be, it can still be a forest, but I'm thinking differently. I'm trying to think. I feel a community art center can then be a studio. Uh,
And it would be nice if the community art center was still in that forest, right?
okay,
But as always, lovely speaking to you, Vrishali. There's always mention of just ecology, oneness, being together. Brilliant conversation as always, which is why I feel like I'd like to hear from you as an art educator, somebody that has worked as an artist, educating teachers and students. What is something that you'd like to say to those who insist we color inside the lines?
okay, so I can perhaps draw a parallel with something that I worked on
Yes,
previously.
please.
Um, like these doubly manicured gardens. If you've seen, there are lines of hedges which are all in the straight line. And there was this one instance where I saw a flower bed being manicured like that, where it was full with yellow flowers, and whatever grew outside the permitted limit or the decided limit of the flower bed, all the flowers were being vehemently chopped. Um,
Mm.
and it was a really heartbreaking sight to see very beautiful, delicate flowers being just chopped off. But okay, so I'm going a bit off track. I feel
Not at all.
I feel the answer to this is also not just a yes and no, it shouldn't be done, or yes, it should be done. Uh, the thing is that a lot of the teachers do it because they want the child to develop a psychomotor skill of having control of coloring within the line. But what happens in all the schools that I have seen, at least, is that this becomes the only way of coloring for children, and that is very problematic. I feel only coloring within the lines doesn't, it sort of limits the child's not just this psychomotor skill, but also uh, the way one processes, and it limits.
And then how that kind of also echoes as they, the older they get. And I'm sure it also reflects in their own processes as they grow.
Yeah.
And this is a great answer. Thank you, Vrishali. And thank you, everybody who's joined us at Art1st Live. I just want to quickly say hello to all of my family who I noticed have just been joining and making me smile with so many waves and hearts. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all to our teachers and the Art1st team. And Vrishali, thank you so much for speaking with
Thank
me.
you
It
so
was
much.
really nice talking to you. I'll see you soon.
See you
See
soon.
you guys next Friday when I will be speaking to our artist mentor Priyam, who once again has some incredible experience and incredible stories to share with us. See you all next Friday.
See you.
Thank you, Vrishali. Goodbye.
Most welcome. Thank you, in fact.
Ooh, closing this is hard.